All right, we are live. My name is Ben, and I am here with Rob from Lusternia, the producer and creator of one of the Iron Realms games. Hello, Rob.
Hi, how are you doing, Ben?
Good. So, many of you probably know Rob if you are a fan of Lusternia as Estara. And did I get the pronunciation right?
Yeah,
All right,
Astara.
awesome. And some of you, if you've played Iron Realms games like Achaea, may know Rob from a past life, which he played a goddess on, and that was Eris, I believe.
Eris, goddess of chaos,
Yeah,
and the
so
player the player was Servalan. If you're really old,
if you're really old or you know the occultist history or the history of Ashton and that whole world, then yeah, you would know your first player.
good times.
Yeah, in fact, there's so many stories that probably go back to that era. So yeah, I thought we would jump on into this. People are wanting to get to know producers at Iron Realm, so that's what we're doing. We're introducing players to producers. Some of them probably already know you because you've been doing your own screencasts and answering people's questions. But I think that players from other games would like to get to know the producers of games they don't play. And maybe we'll get to ask some questions more in a live format. So we'll throw out the tough questions at you.
Okay.
So, first, I thought we'd ask just to give a general description of the game that you created and tell us a little bit about yourself as well and what would motivate you to get involved in creating a game like Lusternia.
Well, Lusternia, actually, way back when I was on Achaea, Matt and Holly, the producer there, Serapis at the time,
Mm-hmm.
was suggested that he wanted to do another game after Atolia. And me and a coder there, a volunteer coder, who's Rourke in Lusternia, we wanted to be the producer of that game. And so we put in an application and we lost. And we lost out to Jeremy, and that became Empyrean.
Right.
So Matt gave me a couple of options of if I wanted to get on more on board with Iron Realms, and one of which was to do my own game from scratch.
Hmm.
So that's how Listernia got started. David and I, Rourke and I, took a year off and developed Listernia. We basically got the IKEA code, but we stripped it all out. We destroyed all the rooms, unlike like Empyrean and Atolia, where they sort of
Have similarities.
massaged
Yeah. Yeah.
massaged the areas there. We
Sure.
started completely from ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that with the skills. We came up with a new skill system.
Right.
Um, so what was the question?
Well, the question was, yeah, just basically what
That's
inspired
how
you and how you got started on it.
that's how we got
Yeah.
started. The inspiration was I had some trouble figuring out where we would start with the storyline,
Mm-hmm.
and I had done some of my own creative writing at the time. So I said, well, why don't I just use that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which ironically was based on or inspired by a Dungeons and Dragons pen and paper campaign
Hmm.
that I did many years ago.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the inspiration came, as people know, from my own readings of Lovecraft and all sorts of different authors. And it came together with the Listernian history, with the Elder Wars,
Mm-hmm.
going to the Vernal Wars, going to the fall of the Celestine Empire. So a lot of it was based on creative inspiration.
Right. Well, for some of our younger viewers, they might not know what Dungeons and Dragons is. That was a old school game that people played literally in paper
It's
on
still
paper.
around.
Yeah, no, people still play it, but it was played in person. There wasn't computers involved at the time, so some of them
that
might have
that's
never
what
experienced
really
a game without a computer before.
right. That's what really because they reminded me a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons things because it's all in text,
Mhm.
and it just reminded me of a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's I think a lot of well maybe the older time people are drawn to text games.
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just a theory.
Yeah, I could totally understand where you're coming from there. So let's jump a little bit further into this and talk a little bit about your background and a little bit of an understanding. So you talked about how you came up with this creative writing. At that time, you were an Achaean god, a goddess of another game,
Goddess of Chaos.
right? And you had already done some creativity in that game as far as creating areas and inputting. Was
Yeah, I was
this?
actually the building manager in
Oh,
IKEA at the time.
so there's a lot that has been done in Achaea that you were responsible for. What are some of the things that you could lay
Um,
claim to that people might not know about?
well, I was in IKEA. I was one of the first gods of IKEA. There's a couple before me, but I was pretty much there at the beginning. And at the time, I did most of the Ashtan and Shalom quests.
Mm,
Like if you're familiar with Shalom, there's like a whole series of quests with like a boy with a kite and a elephant with a peanut and Ashtan. There's a bunch of little quests too,
mhm.
and I did all those beginning quests in those first two cities. There's only those two cities at the time,
Mhm.
um, and a lot of my building there after that was sort of based on Eris. I was going to have there was a big plot of Eris that was to destroy the old god Babel, which we never got to. I
Right.
think we did some type of role playing thing at the end, but the pyramid, Kazmarkin, is that it?
Mhm.
Are you
Oh,
familiar with
yeah,
Ikea?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, there was a whole series of areas that were going to be put together that were a big plot, a big overarching arc that
Mm.
was building up to for Eris to go back in time and destroy Babel and become the only god of chaos because there could only be one.
Oh well,
Uh,
I might expose my lapse of playing in Achaea, but I know there was summoning of several different beings, and I think like I want to say Tog was one of them
yeah,
or something, and that was related to Kazmargin or
yeah,
something, and also there was a whole series of things involving raising the spawn of chaos,
yes.
which I'm not sure if that was tied to the arc or not, but
That
that.
was yeah, it was. That was one of my first. Well, that was what raised Servalan, my character in Ikea, up to. Well, that's how I ascended up to becoming Eris. Was
Right.
doing the. And that was my first quest, I guess, that
Yeah,
I designed for Ikea. Was
that
something.
particular quest may be still to this day the most difficult quest to do in all of the games of Iron Realms, in especially now because there's such a defensive position put between the cities nowadays to be able to actually get the orphans from other cities that are required to create the whole concoction to raise the spawn and so forth.
Yeah.
It's literally an impossibility almost nowadays, but people did it back in the day.
Yeah.
So
Well, Servalan was the first one that did it.
yeah.
And when I designed the quest, right now, builders in all the games do what's called progging,
Mhm.
which is a script language that
Right.
we code the quest. Back then, the spawn is hard coded into IKEA, unless they
Oh,
redid it. I don't know if they did,
I couldn't tell you.
but it's it's uh, it was kind of funny how we did the quest back then and
Mhm.
how easy it is to do quests now. I mean,
Right.
even the little quests in Ashton Shalom that I first did,
Yeah.
like the Montagnette quest and the elephant with the peanut quest, those had to be emailed in to upload them into. I don't know if they're still hard coded, but it was quite a process back then to do quests. It's much
Wow.
easier to do them now.
No, that is much easier. I can totally imagine. The